Carving Sword. The Carving Sword is used in Mist, Hellgates and can also be used for farming in the open world. It is also good in most group content, and has many build variations depending on the group's goals and the leader's preferences. Therefore, for group content we will look at several classic builds for the Carving Sword. Skills for the Carving Sword. First Q, Heroic Strike. You dash to the targeted enemy and deal damage. This ability applies one heroic charge on you. Each heroic charge increases your movement speed by 9% and attack speed by 12% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. This skill is suitable for solo and duo PvP. Second Q, Heroic Cleave. Deals damage to enemies within a 6-meter radius around you, and applies heroic charges on you based on the amount of enemies hit. This skill is ideal for group PvP, as it deals AoE damage and provides 2 heroic charges when hitting 3 or more enemies. W skills for the Carving Sword. Most often used third W, Split and Slash. Splits the ground in a straight 13-meter line, roots all enemies hit and dealing damage. This skill is a solid choice for PvP, as it delivers significant damage, has long-range casting and make it easier to chase or escape in the mists. This is the main W for Carving Sword. First W, Blade Cyclone. Good for solo PvE. Spin in the targeted direction, dealing damage to all enemies in your path. This skill deals more damage than Split and Slash, but if you are attacked while farming, you may not have time to switch back to Split and Slash for PvP. Second W, Interrupt. Interrupt the target's spellcasting and deals minor damage. This ability is situational and can be useful if your opponent uses abilities with long casting times. However, Split and Slash is generally more effective since it prevents enemies from escaping. Fourth W, Hamstring. Slows the enemy and deals minor damage. This skill is less effective compared to Split and Slash, which not only roots but also deals significant damage and has a longer range. Fifth W, Parry Strike. Grants 0.8 seconds of invulnerability, reflects 125% of incoming damage and deals AoE damage in a 5-meter radius. This skill is useful against opponents with high instant damage, such as crossbows or cursed staffs. You cannot reflect the E ability from one-handed cursed staff. Sixth W, Iron Will. Above that increases your movement speed, defense and grants immunity to buff Purge. Upon activation it also applies on you one heroic charge. Sometimes used in group PvP to quickly stack 3 heroic charges and maximize the resistance reduction of the Carving Sword's E ability. E of the Carving Sword, Fearless Strike. Dash toward the targeted position, dealing damage to all enemies you pass through, decreases their damage resistances for 6 seconds, based on the amount of heroic charges on you. Almost always the first passive is the one that causes bleeding on the enemy for 1.5 seconds every 4th hit. This is the most popular passive for the sword, as extra damage is never unnecessary. The second passive reduces the enemy ongoing damage by 2% with every auto attack for 2 seconds, stack up to 5 times. It reduces very little outgoing damage, lasts very briefly, and how to implement it is unclear. In my opinion, this passive needs a rework. The third passive applies one heroic charge on you, every 4th auto attack. It's not a problem to stack heroic charges with Q. So, for what this passive, no one knows. The first passive can be used in duo mists. Every 5th hit increases your damage resistance for 2 seconds. Builds for solo mists. Let's start with the budget option. The approximate cost of the optimal build is 280k. This build is mainly suitable for PvE and fights against opponents with the same or lower item power. Hunterhood increases your damage resistance and reflects 85% of the damage taken for 3 seconds. It's easier to fight opponents with instant damage and equal or higher item power. Assassin's Jacket. Applies invisibility on you for 7 seconds. Attacking or using any skill will reveal you. It increases damage by 4% for every 0.5 seconds while remaining invisible, up to 10 stacks. Invisibility allows you to avoid unwanted fights. Any plate boost with rejuvenating sprint for mobility and healing. Dead for cape activated by auto attacks. It realizes a chain lightning, dealing damage to up to 4 enemies. Consumables. Health regeneration soup when out of combat or beef stew to increase damage. health potions and giant potions. This next build is more expensive, but with it you can compete with both enemies with the same item power and those with a higher item power. The approximate cost of the optimal build is 2.5 million. Fiend Scowl. Purge all buffs from the targeted enemy. The Fiend Scowl has a self-targeting ability. Primarily you should to use it to purge the enemy's run buff when they running away from you. Alternatively, Helmet of Valor. In a 4-meter radius, it removes all negative effects from allies and all buffs from enemies. Unlike Fiend Scowl, the Helmet of Valor can reveal enemies from invisibility, but it's much harder to hit. Mistwalker Jacket. Turn into a mist cloud with a 7-meter radius, granting immunity to all effects and slowing yourself by 20%. Attacking, using an ability or interacting with an object will reveal you temporarily. The skill lasts up to 5 seconds and you can deactivate it earlier. It's the best option for 1v1 fight, allowing you to dodge powerful enemy abilities without taking damage. Any Plate Boots. Undead Cape for safety. The Undead Cape makes you invisible for 6 seconds when your health drops below 15%. Tedford or Avalon Cape for damage. Tedford Cape activated by auto attacks. It realizes a chain lightning, dealing damage to up to 4 enemies. Avalon Cape. After 0.5 seconds following an auto attack, it deals damage in a 6-meter radius around you, reducing the damage of affected enemies by 15% for 4 seconds. Consumables. Roasted Pure Mist Snapper increases your maximum health and grants lifesteal. Health Potion and Giant Potion. For Doom Mist, you can use the same builds as for Solo Mist, or if you play with a healer, the following build will work well. The approximate cost of the optimal build is around 700k. Fiend Scowl with a Purging skill. Robe of Purity. You surround yourself with a shield with a 3-meter radius. Enemies who touch the shield are knocked back with a 12 meters and receive minor damage. It also grants you immunity to forced movement effects. If you're fighting against 2 damage dealers, they will likely try to kill the healer first. The rope can be used to zone them away from the healer. If you're against a healer and damage dealer, your main task will be to push the healer and the damage dealer apart so the healer can reach and heal the damage dealer. Mage Rope increases your damage resistance. Every time you take damage from an attacker, all buffs effects on the attacker will be purged. The Mage Rope is great against healer and damage dealers with the Robes of Purity. If they try to knock back you, the Robe of Purity will purge as soon as they touch you. Any Sandals to run and regenerate mana. Tedford Cape or Avalon Cape for damage. Consumables. Beef Stew for damage. Protection Potions if you're playing with a healer, and Cleansing Potion against one-shot builds. This build also works for duo hellgates, but in the current meta, the current sword is not popular here. Build for group PvP. The usual minimum threshold for a good group is a T8 equivalent gear, which means it can be T5.3, T6.2 or T7.1 gear. The approximate cost is 1 million. Knight's Helmet. Grants 10 allies within a 10-meter radius immunity to forced movement effects for 6 seconds. Demonic Armor. Creates an aura around you, reflecting 15% of incoming damage to you and your 9 allies. Cultist Sandals. Leave a trail behind you that applies a debuff to enemies, reducing their damage resistance and healing received. Marlock Cape. Activates when a health drops below 25%, increases your defense against all damage by 15% for 5 seconds. Avalon Omelette for cooldown reduction and additional protection. And Giant Potion. Overall performs well in solo and duo PvP, in demand in group PvP, has a variety of build options, has a good mobility and some control. Not popular in group PvE. In solo and duo PvP depends on the tier of the gear. That's all, thanks for watching.